The Subject of War. From Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels, 1726. Jonathan Swift, 1667 to 1745, was an Anglo-Irish satirist. This excerpt from Gulliver's Travels. He asked me, what were the usual causes or motives that made one country go to war with another? I answered, they were innumerable, but I should only mention a few of the chief. Sometimes the ambition of princes, who never think they have land or people enough to govern. Sometimes the corruption of ministers, who engage their masters in a war in order to stifle or divert the clamor of the subjects against the evil administration. Differences in opinions has cost many millions of lives. For instance, whether flesh be bread or bread be flesh, whether the juice of a certain berry be blood or wine, whether whistling be a vice or a virtue, whether it be better to kiss a post or throw it in the fire, what is the best color for a coat, whether black, white, red, or gray, and whether it should be long or short, narrow or wide, dirty or clean, with many more. Neither are any wars so furious and bloody, or of so long a continuance as those occasioned by difference in opinion, especially if it be things indifferent. Sometimes the quarrel between two princes is to decide which of them shall dispossess a third of his dominions, where neither of them pretend to any right. Sometimes one prince quarrels with another for fear the other shall quarrel with him. Sometimes a war is entered upon because the enemy is too strong, and sometimes because he is too weak. Sometimes our neighbors want the things which we have, or have the things which we want, and we will fight till they take ours or give us theirs. It is a very justifiable cause of war to invade a country after the people have been wasted by famine, destroyed by pestilence, or embroiled by fractions among themselves. It is justifiable to enter into war against our nearest ally when one of his towns lies convenient for us, or a territory of land that would render our dominions round and complete. If a prince sends forces into a nation where the people are poor and ignorant, he may lawfully put half of them to death and make slaves of the rest, in order to civilize and reduce them for their barbarous ways of living. It is a very kingly, honorable, and frequent practice, when one prince desires the assistance of another to secure him against an invasion, that the assistant, when he has driven out the invader, should seize on the dominions himself and kill, imprison, or banish the prince he came to relieve. Alliance by blood or marriage is a frequent cause of war between princes, and the nearer the kindred is, the greater their disposition of quarrel. Poor nations are hungry, and rich nations are proud. And pride and hunger will ever be at variance for these reasons. The trade of a soldier is held the most honorable of all others, because a soldier is a Yahoo hired to kill in cold blood as many of his own species who have never offended him as possibly as he can. There is likewise a kind of beggarly prince in Europe, not able to make war by themselves, who hire out their troops to richer nations for so much a day to each man, of which they keep 3/4 to themselves, and it is the best part of their maintenance, such as those in many northern parts of Europe. What you have told me, said my master, upon the subject of war, does indeed discover many admirably the effects of the reasons you pretend to. However, it is happy that the shame is greater than the danger, and that nature has left you utterly incapable of doing much mischief. For your mouse lying flat with your faces, you can hardly bite each other to any purpose unless by consent. Then, as the claws upon your feet before and behind, they are so short and tender that one of your yahoos would drive a dozen of yours before him. And therefore, in recounting the number of those who have been killed in battle, I cannot but think you have said the thing which is not. I could not forbear shaking my head and smiling a little at his ignorance. And being no stranger to the art of war, I gave him a description of cannons, culverins, muskets, carabines, pistols, bullets, powder, swords, bayonets, battles, sieges, retreats, attacks, undermines, countermines, bombardments, sea fights, ships sunk with 1,000 men, 20,000 killed on each side, dying groans, limbs flying in the air, smoke, noise, confusion, a trampling to death under horses' feet, flight, pursuit, victory, fields strewed with carcasses, left for food to dogs and wolves and birds of prey, plundering, stripping, lavishing, burning, and destroying. And to set forth the valor of my own dear countrymen, I assured him that I had seen them blow up hundreds of enemies at once in a siege, and as many in a ship, and beheld the dead bodies drop down in pieces from the clouds, to the great diversions of the spectators. I was going on to more particulars when my master commanded silence. He said, "Whoever understood the nature of yahoos might easily believe it possible for so vile an animal to be capable of every action I had named, if their strength and cunning equaled their malice. But as my discourse had increased the abhorrence of the whole species, so he found it gave him a disturbance in his mind, to which he wholly a stranger before. He thought his ears, being used to such abominable words, might by degrees admit them with less detestation, that although he hated the yahoos of this country, yet he no more blamed them for their odious qualities than he did a bird of prey for its cruelty, or a sharp stone for cutting his hoof. But when a creature pretending to reason could be capable of such enormities, he dreaded lest the corruption of that faculty that might be worse than the brutality itself. He seemed therefore confident that instead of a reason, we were only possessed of some quality fitted to increase our natural vices, as the reflection from a troubled stream returns to the ill-shapen body, not only larger, but more distorted." A speech, an excerpt from Gulliver's Travel. It is interesting the way he does describe things and then deny things based on what tastes good to his palate. It is interesting that Things do not change as much as they stay the same. Throughout history, people have killed and been killed in battle. It still goes on now. Whether the battle be against flesh and blood or not. The things that we experience now give way to preparing us for war and battle. We want to be prepared for war and battle because in that is the making of the warrior cry, the warrior hope, the warrior idea. And when you find the strength inside of yourself to cry out in battle, you change. You change who you are around, and you change what you say, and where you go from this moment forward. Each one of us has a battle cry. We just have to seek it, nurture it, understand it, and then apply it. The battle cry.